Have you seen the X threads on how there are going to be 4 jobs left?
Oh,
Have you seen it?
No.
Product and engineering, security, hot people, and adults. I can't believe you haven't seen this.
I haven't seen this. This is amazing. Wow. Okay, so I'm disqualified from adults right off the bat. So that's a no-go.
By the way, I definitely want to be in the hot people category.
Yeah. I aspire, but like I think I might have to give up on that.
But it goes to my. I've spent much of my career in the invisible side of work, which is now, of course, becoming more visible and
how's that
decision making. It's going great.
Yes. Welcome to Context.
Welcome to Context, everybody.
Jess, welcome to Context.
Very excited.
You are COO.
Newly minted.
Newly minted. Can I still say this? Yes. You joined us as general counsel.
I did.
I think that's
4.5 years ago.
4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Kicking ass and telling us to go for gold and go win things and so on ever since. And should we dive into like your story here, because I feel like we should.
Let's do it.
Let's do
it.
It's such a whirlwind, and so I think a lot of context is about, like, in a way we talked about this earlier, but like it's like, how did fix happen? It matters. Like what were the inputs? What were the decisions? The important ones.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting time we're in, and we'll get into all this. But like, where did we come from?
Yes. Where did we come from? All right. Well, how far back should we go?
What's Jess all about?
Well, I think it's, it's not what you expect. I think that's always been the interesting part of my journey. I have had lots of different experiences, and I think that makes me a different kind of creature in a lot of ways. Certainly, I think you and I share a very similar way of thinking about things.
The non-standard path.
The non-standard path. And I'm a deeply unsentimental human. And I actually think that has really led to great things, because I think about things in all sort of ways that are fairly detached, and I can think about things in lots of different kinds of first principles ways. And I don't really get attached to an idea or an outcome or something that becomes.
Have you always been like this, or it has the law study, like
always been like that?
Always been like this.
Always been like that.
Is it that? Do you think people become like, because the role of, like, at least the comic book sketch of an attorney is like that someone who can passionately defend any side, which I think is like an enormously valuable skill. But I wonder, like, is it that people who can do this become lawyers, or
good question,
or is it the other way around?
I don't know the answer to that. I didn't innately want to become a lawyer. My dad's a physician, and so I grew up in a very doctor-centered household, as you did too.
Yes.
And so I liked the sort of critical thinking aspects of things, and how to think about things always drew my attention. So I think I sort of naturally led down the path of law. And then I studied at law school with a behavioral economist.
Oh, yeah.
And so I did a lot of behavioral economist work. I then went to government, and then I sort of followed that path a bit.
The nudge unit times.
The nudge unit times, yeah. So I did a lot of work on nudge and other kinds of work, and that, I think, shaped quite a bit of kind of how I think about things.
Which, who did you? Is that a big name?
Cass Sunstein.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, and he was a professor of mine, and sort of deeply influenced how I think about things, and very well known behavioral economist, libertarian, and went into government, did a lot of work with him, thought about how you set things up. I wasn't a lawyer. I was a lawyer, but I wasn't really practicing law at that time. And I've practiced law. I was in politics, as you know, for a while.
Yes.
Which really teaches you other.
I don't know what got into you.
I don't know what got into me either. But it is. But the common strand is really like how you think about things, right? And how you develop skills to be on your feet and really think. And this is kind of goes to my theory of how the type of talent density is really changing. I've always been a generalist, and I've always been someone who thinks about lots of different things, who likes learning lots of different new spaces. And that part has always been exciting to me, learning new challenges and taking on new things that I know nothing about. As evidenced by my path here, has grown fairly organically over the last couple of years.
One of my favorite early Jess memories is, I think when you came in, so I'm like, how do you deal with this transition? And your response was, not even close to the hardest transition I had to deal with in my career, meaning the White House transition. Like,
The
right,
White House
like
transition was a big one.
from which one?
The last one was from President Trump to President Biden.
Right.
And like that experience of being able to think about like, how would I set up things and how do I get to create this like day one of this new administration and what we're going to do and what decisions are we going to make and what we're going to prioritize. It's actually a fairly amazing thing.
Wow, you just made being in a government sound interesting. Like, that literally never happened to
I would
me.
never go back. But for a moment in time, it was this amazing way of thinking about like, oh, okay, like actually, how do I set up this information architecture of like how decisions get made?
Actually, can you like dig? So like literally, how do you do it? Like, because at some point you're like, okay, I mean, first you have to figure out what's true. Then you have to figure out what to do about it. Like, I mean, this is one of the funny things in life is like, if you can just do that, you're outperforming most people, frankly, because that's a good starting point. But like, you know, like in an infinite possibility space, how do you figure out what to do?
It's not easy. And I think there are things that have to get done. And then there are things that are like sort of discretionary choices.
Because there's like a schedule you have to like, I mean, at some point there's going to be, I guess, a state of the union. At this point, really, you have to figure out your messaging.
And then the question is like, how do you actually, the coolest part, right, is how do you actually get all the information from where you need to get it? How do you synthesize it? And then how do you force a decision to get made? Which is obviously a vast simplification of what that process looks like. But it's taking a massive amount of information and basically, like my job was to go to each of the different like policy members or cabinet members or whomever to sort of say, you guys aren't talking to each other. It's basically my job now in a different way.
I was like, yeah, that sounds familiar.
Like, have you actually talked to this person? Because from where I sit, and it was cool, right? Because I get to see everything. And so part of that role is to say what's actually important. Like, where do you pick up signal and what does that actually mean? And then how do you connect the dots? And then how do you actually make good decisions quickly? And one of the kind of superpowers is really to synthesize that information in a super simple way to be able to say, this is what's important, this is who's disagreeing or not disagreeing, and this is how you actually sort of think about a problem. So not all that dissimilar, but in a very different context.
It is funny, like again, it's funny how fractal the world really is.
It is, And I do think I think politics and tech are actually much more similar than people give it credit for. There's a lot of pace, there's a lot of different kinds of flavors of trying to figure out problems in different ways, but I actually think it's not as dissimilar as we all might.
This is probably why tech and politics get so famously well along.
Maybe.
Oh boy. I
do think, though, I'd love your take on. I know at Shopify we've said there are T-shaped people. I even remember when I was interviewed, it was very, part of my interview process was sort of...
We probably talked about it.
I think we did talk about it. And so I'm curious for your take on, is that changing? My theory is maybe we're morphing from a T shape to an X shape, because X shape has two different T's in it. Craft kind of still remains...
That's fascinating.
Maybe we'll see if it sticks. But craft still remains obviously useful and obviously an important part, but it's no longer quite as singular, right? So you no longer have the vertical T, and your ability to do different kinds of things, your ceiling is quite open. And so the sort of expansion up becomes even more possible. And I think part of the really special part about Shopify is we've had so many leaders in different parts of the company, and jungle gyming and that kind of multidisciplinary aspect is so important at Shopify and valued at Shopify. I think we might be progressing.
Yeah. I haven't thought about this in a while, but I think you're right that this is the kind of thing that's like, again, as much as you want to, as much as I want to anyway, like you can't rethink everything all the time, right? Like it's just like impossible.
Of course.
And so, but what is so good is, again, not having just the deference to the prior decisions all the time, going to rethink this. I agree with you, but clearly there's so much happened with the tools we get to use, with the way information is now can be acquired. So the relative value between fluid intelligence that you bring to make a good decision given everything you've got, or crystallized intelligence, which is the knowledge you have accumulated.
Right.
The world has shifted enormously towards fluid intelligence again, because because knowledge in many cases is a little bit, I also don't want to dismiss it. It's still massively important. Like, oh, this is another one of those is like the probably most valuable thing anyone can say when something goes wrong, because then you have seen the movie before and you know what to do. But acquiring of knowledge is quite much easier. So it's really like, what it really should do is that people are more ready to step out of their roles, right? Like it's, right. I think this whole thing about roles is going to be will come, actually, not the extreme case, but it will be much more muted. I think people are going to, I think the entire world is going to turn into more jungle gym. If you've proven that you can do something at an excellent level in one area, you should think that you can do excellent work in most areas after.
But does that apply to high agency people, or you think that's going to apply everywhere?
I think the high agency thing is the thing we've always looked for, right? Like this has just been like, the life story is really like, find things that ideally we find a story where something went wrong, and then we dig into what did you do about that? Mm-hmm. Like, were you part of a, that's a lot of what the life story does. We didn't have words for it, but like we knew that people who had a good story about their particular role, and that something happened, good or bad, or generally, is the world happening to them, or are they making a dent? We always thought was deeply correlated with doing well at Shopify, and so this is like why which has always been good. We've been stacked up with the kinds of people who want to do this, and then hopefully give them the room to actually act on this. And I just feel like it's, as Shopify's systems have become more mature and code bases have like just more age, like some are like, do I really want to edit something that clearly has not been a problem for 10 years in this? Like, do you want to change this code? Because afterwards you're taking some responsibility for it. I get that, but like, and I think the incentives are to not make a new module, replace the thing or whatever, like work around it. I like, the beautiful thing is now we can just like, hey, let's actually improve the thing.
Yes.
And so I think high agency people have like the tools again to be high agency at much larger scale.
Yes. Well, one of the things I think about too, which is, and I have a question for you in this, which is, most companies call what we call talent HR, right? Which is so interesting in this moment in time, because the whole point of HR is that it's human resources.
Yes.
And now everything is possible in a different kind of way. We, of course, call it talent. Was that a conscious choice? Or because of course the beauty of it is that everything can get rethought in this moment in time. So I'm curious where that distinction came from.
I'm actually not aware that that's not common in the industry. I don't know, but like it would be surprised, because it seems pretty, like, human resources always sounded wrong to me. It just, I don't know. It sounds more too much like seeing like a state. It sounds too much like bureaucratic legibility. Yeah. Some areas of a company have to be named after an activity, but like where you can drive to an outcome, you want to name it after this. Like, I think there's often these things don't matter, but I think it matters if you're like the difference. Like, if you only have marketing teams, then you clearly get a lot of units of marketing performed in a company. based on an outcome, like growth is what you want, right? So either you have no growth team, or you have a growth team, or you only have a growth team. Those are all valid decisions you can make. But like I think most companies don't even are aware of a choice, and you do get different behaviors there. So I think talent density is the outcome that we want, and I think it's like shortening it to talent is good. I think it set us up well to rethink things.
I do too. I think it set us up extremely well.
I talk sometimes with people who are boomerangs and come back and like maybe have done 1 or 2 reps in other companies. And funnily enough, even the boomerang thing is accelerating. Like people are coming back much faster. We've now have the first people boomerang from after we created the Flex wallet system, and they're coming back, and they're like, I don't think many people think too much about the Flex wallet compensation system we have, but like the boomerangs are saying, holy shit, it's much better. It's so much easier to reason about and all these kind of things.
Yes, I just had a boomerang come back after we changed the sales incentive comp that day. I had someone email me and they start next week. So another boomerang coming back, which is
that's awesome.
Very
on the sales,
on the sales comp. Yeah. So as we kind of went about changing that system and externally, it makes a difference too. So it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I can call it company engineering. Like let's do things differently to see if something looks better, and be okay admitting if it did end up like sometimes that happens too. Action causes information. But we've like worked on a bunch of things. Like but whenever I'm talking with another CEO about the Flex wallet system, the fact that people can dial it in every quarter, they're like, how did you do this as a company with international employees?
Yes.
It's like, I'm like,
we just made it work.
Like somehow the team made it work.
Yeah, we did. We made it work.
I have no idea how you did that, but like, yes, can't have been easy.
So how do you think about the kind of combinations of building systems and teams?
I think these are incredibly symbiotic. But like, where's the line? It's really I did I read biographies of people who did great work, and just here's you'll see the patterns. It's very, very common that you read about the same thing. The people who biographies are written about clearly are people of significant aptitude. It's usually like winding roads to get there, picking up skills along the way, and then somehow either having a physical or mental space for it, like a room, like an attic. It's sometimes physical, sometimes it's like a domain they are responsible for, and they take ownership to like try within this area, within this thing, within this box. I'm gonna do my best work to solve the problems I care about or create the works I care about, right? I think these things in every one of the cases have been created by a structure around them. Like there's always a support around it. These are not naturally occurring environments. Leonardo da Vinci had his attic, but only because of the organizational structure of patronage, right? Like so.
Maybe this goes back to our invisible-visible distinction.
And so I think they can both what is a team? What is the roles in a team, the size of it? Like those you can optimize for how to get the best out of a particular metaphorical box that is owns the problem set. But like an organization structure then holds this up. And so this is how they work together.
But it matters so much what those choices are. And I have found, and even within a team, I think kind of understanding people's strengths and understanding where you need to fill gaps and understanding different people that work well together. Yeah. And so saying, okay, well, this pair of people I can drop into any particular problem and they're going to do well, or this foursome is going to do well. It really, I find, changes the output of the work. Yeah. And so the combination of that underlying organizational design and that team structure and how to get leverage out of that team is something that, I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Me too. There's a lot of unaddressed things in this area that I
Yes.
think we can make some progress on now with, again, we're getting better tools. And also I think the feasibility of a small team has massively increased in an AI agentic world, right? Because the world sort of over-specialized quite a bit because, all the skills are hard to acquire. So maybe by necessity, but like the time of a project where you need, a front-end engineer, to take a random example, this is a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But what we know about teams is that the best teams are have done reps together. Like it's human, individuals are atoms. What you want a team to be is like a stable, durable molecule. This is partly why we sometimes do talent acquisitions, because you can bring an entire molecule into a company, which is quite wonderful. How do you allow teams to be stable? Again, if everyone can do more of the jobs, again, AI assisted, that means it starts being more about focus of capabilities, creativities, and of the individuals, and you're not bound to have to grow the thing just by necessity of at some point you need front-end design, right? Mm-hmm. You just know that someone has done the front-end design work at least as good as they can, and then maybe it can go into refinement in closer to shipping. We can always ad hoc bring people in then instead of starting every team with minimum of 6 people, because you need 6 different discipline skills to just even get started. So I think that's a really, really powerful thing. But really, the way organization happen in companies is that there's areas, because institutional knowledge about an area, the payments team is in payments. This sort of institutional knowledge about the area, the code base, sure. Just so much of a lingo. Again, I'm talking about very much engineering, but I think you can apply the same thing to absolutely everything. I'm pretty bullish on that we finally don't need that so much anymore, because that knowledge about where's the code base, where do you go, and what does this module do is something you can, again...
That's the context point, right? That gets compressed, and that's easier to access, and it just changes the calculus.
That's right. So now it becomes more about what is your skills, taste, decision-making, and just talent here in an area. And I think it will hopefully allow to create these stable teams of people who really appreciate it, they work really well together, and have them roam over the inside of a company more, because I think that actually is also more fun.
I do too.
And so there's definitely something there.
I do too. I really like this concept, and I've thought a lot about how does this actually kind of play out, and I see it playing out inside the company, where you can see these kind of mini teams, these people that pair so exceptionally well together. It's often multidisciplinary. Yeah. It's often, people solving problems together, repeatability and scalability. And so the question is, how does that kind of get, how do we think about repeating that inside the company?
It's actually really interesting to think of it. We never gave people the ability to sort of fuse into a molecule sort of in the vault. I wonder if that's a thing that we should just
Swati, if you're listening.
Yeah. This is prompt engineering through context episode.
Exactly.
It's perfect. But again, I don't know what this exactly would look like, but I feel like it's often making the concept explicit.
Yes.
We
do some of this in Mastery too.
Yeah, Mastery is amazing at this. The talent tools are insanely good.
Yes, the talent tools are insanely good.
They're so good. Every time.
They keep getting better too.
Yeah.
And the team has done an exceptional job at progressing those.
Yeah.
But I've often thought about this. Do we build in some sort of social coefficient in some way, right? So you can sort of see exactly kind of who you're working with most. It actually sort of underpins this idea a bit. A little bit of my old meta days coming through.
Yeah, exactly. It's like graph proximity.
Exactly.
Essentially, yes.
So that's another direction we could go in it eventually.
That's interesting. I'm sure we could whip up a quick page to who is your sort of virtual team here?
And probably, we have all the information. We could do that.
Yes. But again, I think what's so exciting is this sort of again, I just feel company building is such an unfinished project. All companies that exist are bad. Some are less bad than others from a perspective of what we eventually will deem to be the right way to organize companies. It's one of the most fun projects to figure out how to arc the systems of Shopify to of a company towards being more grounded in reality of how great work truly happens, rather than how sort of textbooks described it somewhere in the 30s.
I think it's a special part of this company that is, and we don't talk about it. We talk about it, of course, but not maybe enough. And are you seeing other companies out there that you look at to say they're doing this exceptionally well, or what parts do we want to emulate?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of companies that do well. No, there's a few companies. There's most companies seem pretty dead. Like sadly, I'm not dead in this sort of business sense. So I should clarify. There's an old essay that I read, and I always overestimate how much like it's sort of obscure, and then I reference it, and everyone just looks at me. Called "Dead and Alive Players," and I actually like always sort of apply this more to companies. And do they do something? Like is there any kind of thing happening there? Like that's like not the sort of most expected. Like could an LLM predict the next move of a company reliably every time? Because that means it's sort of like works by a operating system that is also gleanable by just training like a floating point matrix on the sum total of human observable knowledge, right? Like, so what is actually the decision that happens there? And it's remarkable how many companies just kind of perform like this. Then there's some companies that are unpredictable in a great way. And I think unpredictability, is a virtue in many ways. It's also very often quite unpopular. So there's actually counter incentives to being unpredictable. Trust me, Wall Street loves predictability, right?
Yes.
So, So it's, but like companies that are unpredictable do something different axiomatically than everyone else. Now, they might be doing worse, but they could be doing better. And so the set of companies that like bring novel ideas in is a small one, but there's lots of interesting things like going on. Just the path by which people took to AI emergence is like one where like really most companies did nothing and people just used their private accounts sometimes, and then some companies are like went all the way to banning it, and some companies went like deeply to embracing it. And like when you find out which one is the right path, I think in this one I think we are probably the far top right of a scatterplot company, which is neat. I really like companies doing their own thing. I think there needs to be diversity of companies, and I think people should then choose companies based on how much are they willing to deal with experimental designs and so on. And I think
all companies are different. So we all have our own challenges to face.
Yeah, and you do, like, again, it's also like, first you need to figure out what is true, then you need to figure out what to do about it. Like, I mean, at some point it was true that people were just like, everyone knows LLMs are expensive. And so there was like, some people got a lot of value, other people were like, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I really should use it a lot. So then we're not the only ones who said like, okay, well, let's do just like one way to confirm that we are actually okay with this is just like make it okay to talk about how much money costs and demonstrate that people do not get in trouble for this, right? Like, so then we went all the way to like, high score tables. I think they were even called that. And I mean, okay, so of course, everyone's allowed to be an intelligent actor in a local incentive system. If a company literally puts me on the top of a high skill table for us, then some people will be incentivized to do something very, 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 very silly, predictably. And it's like, okay, like, I mean, I wish people wouldn't, but like, okay, let's find a better way to communicate the case than maybe just, so I think we found our equilibrium here. But like, I think yesterday there was an article about Meta, like just went also to the top list, which I may have actually suggested. Maybe I didn't update them on the conclusions of the experiments. Anyway, so like seeing the same problems and maybe having gone a bit further. Anyway, it's kind of funny to see the space being explored. And
it's good. I think the exploration is healthy, and I think it's good. And I think the pendulum will swing in lots of different ways, and it will steady. But it is another, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And just you as a company designer, you want to create, you want to make the company as intuitive as possible in such a way that like, if you just like do what you think seems to be like people shouldn't have to spend a lot of brain cycles on having to change the behavior just because the company wants them to, right? Like that's a bad thing. You want to create a very large sort of pit of success for everyone. But like, hey, if you just like do the things that are celebrated around here, then the right things happen, right? Like this is like, it should be not like, it's like software in a way, like software, like you want your software to be simple to use. And so, yeah.
So how do you approach a new challenge?
Me.
It's different today, I think, than probably it was a year ago.
But I think it's
maybe not that different. I don't know.
You know what? It's like some things are always the same, and then some things are, I think, like I want to make as different as possible because that's interesting, right? Like it usually involves a lot of writing to myself. Like that's been sort of, I've got notes.
Yeah, you're really good at the notes.
What I've been really good at is automated, circumstantial data gathering and keeping, right? Like this, like not losing data has been good. And then sort of doing the, random screenshot stuff and so on. I just like data. The early proponent of this examined life or actually quantified self, I think he coined it, was Tim Ferriss. And we are friends. And so I think he kind of got that like bug in my ear. And so just keeping data and seeing what I can learn from it. And of course, that ended up being like the best decision I ever made, given now modern capabilities, because you can go back and.
It's a little bit of your relationship with data probably is misunderstood from a company level.
Interesting.
Is my suspicion.
Why? What do you say?
Well, maybe not, because I think perhaps more specifically, kind of the idea of metrics. And how we use metrics and how we think about, metrics' role in the company and how that's evolving, and kind of how we see metrics as something perhaps not to chase, but also to be mindful of.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because I have to play the role the company needs me to play. Shopify's problem has never been to not look at data. Shopify's problem sometimes is that we over rotate on data. So I had to always play the role of like, hey, don't do what the metrics say. Use the metrics to inform.
I think that's a really good clarification.
And I think a lot of people have misunderstood this as like the metrics don't matter. That's like, anyone who actually knows me knows like I use metrics for everything. I just don't let them dictate. I let them be the major input in my understanding of an area. But then I want to leave room for making a good choice that is sometimes contradictory to the metrics, because the metrics will only illuminate the quantifiable part of a product. But there's so much more, right?
That's so interesting too, because I think in some of the spaces that I've recently gone into, I mean, certainly this was the case in talent and kind of in the commercial space too, where we haven't really actually had enough structured data, clean data to be making decisions. And it is super important. I remember when I took on the talent team, we took on, the recruiting team to say, okay, what is our funnel health? How do you create metrics? How do you create data that actually helps guide the work? Same thing kind of on the commercial side to say, on the sales performance side, what are we looking at? How is that structured? But it has been a progression, certainly, of work here.
And I think this is why I also know you are right about my relationship to data having been misunderstood, because people have probably for years only seen me on the side of like trying to modulate people's desire to just because I mean, it's really fun to like have a perfect proxy data for success, because
it's so fun.
Because everything becomes immediate. Like I'm a race car driver. I get a lap time every lap, right? So I'm like, I love that. Like it's immediate. Like it's like there's a perfect lap time out there, and my actual lap time is the sum total of all my inadequacies as a race car driver. And like this is like, and then next lap I can do a better job in every corner, and I can see it real time. It's great. Wherever that exists, holy shit, let go. But that is. Again, think about what an incredible metric the lap time is. It's like the composite metric of a million things that could possibly be true. It's like even like your tire degradation and how much you degraded your tires over all the other laps you have done is summed into this one. And so, most things in the world are not like that, that you can go and make a perfect composite metric. Like this is like, so people mistake that, and then they pick a lesser metric and then they overfit to it, and really bad or good, like if you're a machine learning person, it's called overfitting. If you're talking about company engineering, it's called Goodhart's law. Same thing, overfitting to a heuristic metric that is just a proxy for a subpart of a business leads to very bad outcome. And again, all these dead and alive companies out there, live ones are all different. The dead ones are all the same. They overfit to very likely the quarterly call if they're a public company or something else entirely. So yeah, let's get lots of data, how to make decisions. I look at the data, I let it inform me, especially. I try to form hypotheses, and then I try to use data to disprove my hypothesis.
Which is easier now with all the tools we have.
All of this is like much easier. And I mean, this is why I'm having such a good time with it all, frankly. This is why I write to myself. Writing about something is kind of honest, because you just immediately know when
you don't know it.
You don't know it.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can't hide.
It's true. You can. I've been told I'm really hard to write for. So I think I have the same problem. But I also do the same thing where if I write a lot to actually test how much I know and how much I can compress ideas and how much I can work with them and how facile I am in terms of kind of the edges and where to see that, which is a unique process. Yeah.
At the end of the day, my job is like making great decisions for the company tilted towards the long term, which sometimes means we have to sacrifice short-term things. But like, I mean, I literally wrote that in the thing I included with when we went public with a F1 IPO note for me, like says that, right? And so that's basically the way I try to do it.
Consistency has been a hallmark of this company for a long time. And I think as we enter this new age, what's balancing that consistency with being able to relook at things and find new ways is going to be an exciting part of the next journey.
I think this is such an interesting thing because it's conceptual and philosophical consistency I think is very underappreciated. I think especially because it's overshadowed by a story of like much more veering and exploration. If you look at Shopify through a very short-term lens, the company can be all over the place. Like this is really well documented even in the public. With like, hey, let's go very, very, very heavily into fulfillment, and then like AI comes on the scene, and it's very clear what Shopify really will have to do over the next years. And there was enough like setbacks that we didn't in the fulfillment world that we didn't necessarily have. Like, I mean, sunk cost fallacy was mostly in the form of losing face over having misallocated some resource potentially, or like I would get criticism. I don't care, right? Like I'm going to be judged as a founder CEO of like how much, like what will Shopify ultimately become. So I can absorb that part, and I don't mind looking like an idiot. It's like I know I'm not an idiot. Therefore, I allow people to think incorrectly about me, and that's nothing to me.
Well, I suspect one interesting thing also to explore is the position of the company itself is changing with AI, right? As we talk about a lot, right? Like the layers are all changing. AI is verticalizing many companies. Like maybe let's unpack a little bit how we see the position of the company with this sort of shifting of the layers. Yeah.
You mean from how we work or from what we do?
I think from what we do, actually.
Yeah. The most valuable thing that Shopify delivers to our amazing customers, who are incredible people reaching for independence, is the ability to continue doing that. And ideally in such a way that it works, they're more successful than they maybe even hoped. And, that they can build larger companies, more international, more global, more, complex, without needing to absorb all that complexity into, their own life, distracting them from a thing that they actually want to do, which is create the products. So it's like we are fundamentally a company that actually takes all the stuff I talked about earlier about creating a box and an organizational structure to create a Da Vinci's attic for our own, for entrepreneurs that use Shopify and the businesses. Like you bring the products, we do everything else. That in a changing world is like way more important again. Like every single time the world gets more complex, Shopify becomes more valuable because we can absorb more of that complexity into our systems and therefore not expose you 100% to that. But the way we will do this is going to be completely different, right? Because it's going to be involving looking a whole lot more like a teammate in your company.
Right.
Everyone should expect Shopify, maybe Sidekick, to literally join Google Meet within the next years, and like also be on iMessage and like Telegram or whatever you want, and you have a very different relationship with it that you can always go and like inspect the guts if you want, but like it's increasingly going to be anthropomorphized in this way. And I think that process is already starting. And the world's not quite ready for that. Like there's nothing to speed run there because there's a sort of sufficient acceptable level of anthropomorphization in the world that like we have to wait for. But like, I mean,
but we're ready.
I've been there forever. Like I'm like, let's go. I've clankers and claws like in every aspect of my life.
Yes, you and Fiona have a joint.
We have a group chat.
You have a group chat.
We have a group chat. Our open claws have a group chat, and they have a very lively discussion, which we find is absolutely incredible. We recently like added like a new claw that like is for the home automation system, like an expert in home automation that just joined the group, and now like this morning, like we have this like we have a complex smart home house kind of thing, and there's like this annoying button right at the garage which like house off, and it's just like then someone hits it like, oh, the lights go out, and like it's almost always by accident.
Yes.
You know, and like these days we go in the group chat. Like I did this on the drive this morning after Fraser, my youngest, did a joke push to like, and then 3 bathrooms were like, oh, turn the light off. So just like, hey, Cresto, because we use Creston, sadly. Hey, Cresto, can you make it so that you have to push the all off button 3 times before it actually does something, and like it just like goes and hacks the Creston system, and it just like all, and the other 2 bots say, oh, that's a really good idea, and like that Fraser is like, it's trouble. It's like, and you're like, this is so delightful.
It's always
anyway,
the last
complete
kid.
right. So last kids, man.
Last kids.
So yeah.
But I'm excited to be here and in the moment, and what a ride these next 18 months are going to be. Buckle up.
Yeah, I love that you're here. Such a delight to work with you. And
likewise.
It's, man.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
But a fun one.
Yeah. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. All right, team.
I don't know if you got into anything you wanted us to get into.